My son, Jake, who is married and has 2 children, was diagnosed with a severe kidney problem. My wife, Annabelle, whom I affectionately called Annie, and I were terrified for our son's life. The doctors informed us that if they couldn't control the kidney issue, Jake might need a transplant. We were desperate to find a way to help him. The doctors suggested we consider family members as potential donors in case a transplant became necessary. Without hesitation, I decided to get tested to see if I could be a match for Jake. I didn't tell Annie or the rest of the family about this. I wanted to be certain before raising anyone's hopes. The next day, the test results came back, and to my shock, we were not a match. I was baffled and asked the doctor why, given that Jake was my son. What could be wrong with my kidneys? I assured the doctor, quite loudly, that despite enjoying a few beers now and then, I didn't smoke. The doctor seemed a bit embarrassed, but remained professional. He then asked me to step into his office. "Mr. Weller," he began gently, "you and your son are not a match because, according to the test, you are not his biological father. I'm sorry to have to tell you this. We've made mistakes before, so we are running the test again to confirm." I was in a state of disbelief as I walked out of the office. Jake has been my son for 28 years, I thought. How could this be happening? I decided not to tell Annie yet, just in case there was an error. But the uncertainty gnawed at me, and when I saw her, I couldn't hide my distress. All sorts of thoughts ran through my mind. What about my other children, Alex, my eldest daughter, and Kaylee, my youngest? Alex was 26, and Kaylee, the light of my life, was 20. Were they truly my children? I prayed that the doctor was wrong. 2 agonizing days passed, filled with worry about Jake's health and the unsettling possibility that he might not be my biological son. Finally, while Annie, Jake's wife Gail, and I sat in the waiting room, the doctor approached us. "I have good news," he said, smiling. My heart soared, thinking he would say the initial test was a mistake and that my kidneys were suitable. But his news was different, though still positive. "Jake's kidneys are responding to treatment," he announced. "He won't need a transplant. In fact, his body is adapting so well to the treatment that he could be discharged in a couple of days," the doctor continued. "He'll need to watch his diet, but otherwise, he should make a full recovery." The relief in the room was palpable. The women were crying tears of joy, and Annie kissed me with so much emotion. There was an immense sense of relief on her face. However, I hadn't yet told her about the results of the test. I decided I would speak to the doctor the next day. Later that evening, I asked Alex, Kaylee, and Annie to take a DNA test. They were curious why it was necessary, so I explained that if any of us encountered a health issue like Jake's, the doctor could prescribe treatment more quickly if he had our genetic information on record. Annie seemed a little anxious, but agreed. The rest of us didn't hesitate. It was just a simple mouth swab, after all. Alex even had her husband and children tested to ensure they were prepared for any future problems. The next day, I went back to the hospital and handed all the samples to the doctor. He delivered the news I dreaded. Jake and I were not biologically related. I asked him to analyze the other samples and keep them on record, promising to cover all the costs. "Mr. Weller, are any of them your family?" the doctor asked gently. "They are all my family," I replied, my voice steady. "My sisters, sons-in-law, grandchildren, my daughter's children, and of course, my wife. I want to know if Alex and Kaylee are my biological children. They have always been my daughters, regardless of the results." Jake was discharged a few days later. He had another week to recover at home before he could return to work. Everyone was overjoyed that he wouldn't need dialysis or a transplant. I tried to maintain my composure, but the need to know the truth about Alex and Kaylee gnawed at me. Annie noticed my strange behavior almost every night and asked why I seemed so preoccupied. I told her the truth, in part. I said that we had been through a lot with Jake, and I was reflecting on our children. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. One evening, I came home from work to find Annie sitting at the table, tears streaming down her face as she looked through some papers. I recognized them immediately. The results from the hospital must have arrived. "When did you do it, and why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I got my kidneys checked to see if I could donate to Jake," I said, my voice calm but filled with underlying tension. Since I thought I was his father, I felt it was my responsibility. Annie's tears fell harder. "And what did you find out?" she asked, though her eyes already held a mix of sorrow and understanding. "I found out that Jake isn't my biological son," I confessed, the weight of the words heavy in the room. "But Annie, he will always be my son, just like Alex and Kaylee will always be our daughters, no matter what the tests say." Annie nodded, her tears not stopping but her expression softening. "We need to talk to the girls," she said quietly. "They deserve to know the truth too." We called Alex and Kaylee over that evening. The conversation was one of the hardest we ever had as a family, but it was also a testament to the strength of our bond. No matter what the DNA tests revealed, our love and commitment to each other remained unwavering. When the doctor told me I wasn't Jake's biological father, I felt a cold dread settle over me. The test results for Alex and Kaylee were next. When I picked up the papers, Annie was sitting at the table, her eyes red from crying. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Alex isn't yours, but Kaylee is," she said in a trembling voice. At that moment, she broke down completely. "What happens now, Dan?" I stood there, speechless. The weight of the revelation was crushing. After 30 years of marriage, I had just learned that two of the children I had loved and supported all their lives were not mine. I looked at Annie, trying to find the right words. "We talk and talk some more. Maybe we'll stay together. Maybe we'll split up." "Dan, that was over 28 years ago," she pleaded. "Can't we leave the past in the past?" "No, we can't," I replied, my voice growing more intense. "You had sex with someone else, and I want to know whose children I've been raising." According to the tests, Alex and Jake are full siblings. That means you had an affair that lasted at least 5 years. This wasn't a one-time fling. "Who the hell were you having an affair with?" I demanded. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It was Harvey. I had an affair with him. It was stupid, wrong, but it's over now." "It seems it's been over ever since Harvey Kittle died about 25 years ago," I retorted bitterly. "He was one of our best friends, and you slept with him? Did his wife Mary know? Did she participate in your sexual escapades?" "Please, Dan, let's not discuss this," she implored. "I love you. This is all ancient history. Can't we just move on?" "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted. "What the hell is going on with you? We got married, and within a year you started having sex with Harvey. You had his child, who I raised as my own. 2 years later, while still sleeping with him, you had another child. If he hadn't died shortly after Alex was born, you'd probably still be having sex with him. Thank God at least one of my children belongs to me. Now, are you ready to explain all this?" Annie was crying, but I wasn't moved. I needed the truth. I deserved the truth. Unlike the movies, I could handle the truth. "I know you and Harvey have always been friends," she began haltingly. "I always loved him, but he chose Mary over me. He got her pregnant. I loved you too, but not as much as Harvey. After he and Mary got married, I was very depressed. You asked me to marry you, and I did it half out of spite. I wanted Harvey to know that I went on living in spite of him. So you married me to mess with Harvey, and to mess with him even more, you ended up having sex with him behind my back?" I asked, incredulous. "You were on the tow truck a lot back then. Mary was working during the day, and Harvey came by to see you. At least that's what he said. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I don't have any excuses. We had a sexual relationship, and I knew I still loved him. He would come to me and always told me that one day we would be together. We just didn't have to rush it. I was a fool, and as long as he made love to me, I didn't care. He stopped seeing me after I got pregnant with Jake. I was really mad at him. He came over and saw Jake and asked if the baby was his. I told him I didn't know, but I wasn't going to tell you anything until he married me. He laughed at me and said you could raise his baby. Do you really believe I'm that stupid? It just happened? What just happened? If you're going to convince me that it just happened, then you're stupider than I can imagine. If you stopped seeing him, what about Alex? Did that just happen too? I told him he wasn't allowed in our house unless you or Mary were here. I had feelings for him, but I found out he was just using me for extra sex. One day he came over and forced me to have sex with him. He said if I refused, he would tell you about Jake. He hurt me. He didn't make love to me. He hurt me a lot. When he left, he laughed and said he hoped he had put another baby in me. I couldn't tell you about it. I didn't want to lose you. Shortly after Alex was born, Harvey died in a car accident. I was sad, but also relieved. I thought I could finally put all the cheating behind me and we could start living a normal life. I loved you more and more. Our life was good, wasn't it? I've spent my whole life trying to make it up to you. I know we had our differences, but overall we had a good marriage, didn't we? Annie asked, her eyes searching mine for any sign of forgiveness. Yes, our marriage was good, I admitted. But now, looking back, I see that it was all based on lies. You cheated on me. You married me while loving another man. You had a child with another man, and then claimed you were raped and got pregnant again without telling me. And now you're telling me to just forget about it. I don't think I can, and I don't want to. I'm going to see our lawyer and start divorce proceedings, I said with finality. Dan, you can't, she cried. What about our kids? What are you going to tell them? I'll leave that up to you. Just so you know, I don't think you were raped, and you would have continued to have sex with him if he hadn't been removed. You have a week to tell me your story for the kids. After that, I'll tell them the truth. She looked at me, her face pale. I take it Jake and Alex don't know that I am not their biological father. Of course they don't. No one knows but me and now you. Please, Dan, they love you. Don't hurt them by telling them that a man they've never met is their father. I am their father, and they are my children. Nothing will ever change that. I've been with them their whole lives, and that won't change. I think we'll both live here until the final contract is finalized, unless you have a lover in mind. It's inappropriate, Dan, and you know it. No, that's the problem. I've been with you for 30 years, and I don't know you. I'll move my stuff into the guest bedroom. I don't want anything more to do with you. Annie started crying as I got up from the table and began moving a few of my things into the guest room. 2 days later, I got a call from the store. They said that my wife's car had driven over a guardrail and fallen onto an embankment. According to them, it looked like she was speeding, going too fast, and didn't have time to turn. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The sheriff questioned me about any problems my wife might have had. I replied that there were none, to the best of my knowledge. He said he was classifying it as an accident, but was going to hold the report until after the autopsy. I couldn't imagine having to bring all the dirty laundry out into the light now. I loved her, but I also hated her, if that's possible. I called all the children and told them about their mother's death. I told them I was going to the hospital to identify the body. They could call a few relatives and pass on the news. I knew it was a shock to everyone, even me. Now it was on my conscience. She took her own life, or it was an accident. A few days later, the autopsy came back clean. Other than the blood pressure medication, the coroner found nothing. Her death was ruled accidental. At the funeral, I grieved for her. Even though I was going through a divorce, I still had strong feelings for her after 30 years of living with her. I was glad I hadn't met with a lawyer yet. No one needed to know about Annie's secret affair. I would have to live with it. It wouldn't do any good if I told my kids about it. The day after the funeral, my 2 daughters and daughter-in-law came into the house. I asked them to take all of their mother's personal belongings and divide them among themselves. All I asked for were a few pictures of us as a family. No one can understand how bad I felt unless they have gone through something similar themselves. The questions of what if kept running through my mind. What if I had never taken this test? What if I never told Annie about it? What if I hadn't told her I was leaving her? Would any of that have changed, or was she just going too fast that day? Chapter 2. Get involved. This all happened 2 years ago, just before the holidays. And here I was, alone again for the holidays. My son and oldest daughter now live about 100 miles away from me. I told them I could come up for a day or two during the vacations. Kaylee was a senior in college and said she was going to England with friends for the holidays. The trip was organized by the college. She had asked me about it a few months ago. She was worried that I would be alone. I tried to explain to the kids that I had been living alone for 2 years now. I spent every day at the service station shop and was never alone there. One day I was sitting in my big comfy chair watching a few programs on my old television set. On came a commercial I had seen over and over again about donating $24 a month to give a child in a third world country 3 meals a day, a place to live, proper health care, and a school education. What the hell? Do people really believe that? Don't get me wrong. I'm all for feeding the hungry and helping those who can't help themselves. But if I could do all that for $24 a month, I should have moved there myself. Sorry, but I'm not big on sending money and hoping it goes to help children. To those who do it and believe in it, I wish you success and may God bless you. However, it gave me an idea. The next day when I was at the store, one of our local priests, Pastor Jim, came in and I asked him if the church was doing one of those Christmas campaigns where they put up a tree and then write on it the names of families who need help for the holidays. Well, yes, Dan, we have one. Do you have a family name you'd like to publish? Pastor Jim inquired. No, Pastor Jim. I need the name of a family I can help over the holidays, I explained. Great, Dan. Just come to the church and pick a name. The Christmas tree is pretty full this year. A lot of people are out of work. Jim, can you give me the name of someone you think really needs help? I don't want it to be a family that is having a hard time with a husband who just got laid off. I want a family whose help during the holidays will really make a difference. I'm not just going to give the child a toy. I want to make sure this is a holiday they will never forget, I clarified. Pastor Jim smiled warmly at me. I think he realized that I wanted to make a genuine difference in someone's life. Dan, I think I have the perfect family for you. We have a young widow with 3 children. They moved here from the big city last year. Her husband was shot during a drug deal gone bad, and she moved here to try to give the kids a fresh start in life, he suggested. Okay, Jim, thank you so much. I know I'm not the church-going type, but I want to help someone this year. I'll come by later and get the name of the family, I replied gratefully. When I told Pastor Jim that I wasn't big on attending church, he understood. I believed in God or something greater than myself. When Annie was alive, I went to church twice a year. I always heard a sermon about where Jesus was born and when he died on the cross. The rest of the time, I attended weddings and funerals. Carmela Wilson was the name on a piece of paper I had taken off a tree at church. A widow with 3 kids, an address, and a phone number. Pastor Jim told me she worked as a waitress at Joe's restaurant. I thought I knew who he was talking about. I'd eaten at that restaurant dozens of times in the last year, if not more. I bet the waitress named Carmen was the very same person Pastor Jim mentioned. I went into the store to make sure everything was under control. Being a hands-on boss, I always like to check in personally. Once I was satisfied everything was running smoothly, I decided to stop by Joe's diner and talk to Carmen. As I walked in, I looked around and saw Joe wave at me. We had been friends since we were kids. Plus, we were both business owners, which made us a little more communal. Hey, Joe, I greeted as I approached the counter. Hey, Dan, what brings you in today? Joe asked, wiping his hands on a dish towel. I'm here to see Carmen. Is she working today? I inquired. Yeah, she's in the back taking a break. She'll be out in a few minutes. Want some coffee while you wait? Joe offered. Sure, that'd be great. Thanks, Joe, I said, taking a seat at the counter. Joe poured me a cup of steaming hot coffee and placed it in front of me. As I took a sip, I couldn't help but think about how I was going to approach Carmen with my offer to help her and her family. I didn't want to come off as patronizing or intrusive. I just wanted to make a difference in their lives this Christmas. A few minutes later, Carmen came out from the back, looking a bit tired, but still managing a smile as she greeted customers. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with recognition. Hi, Dan, how are you? She asked, approaching the counter. I'm good, Carmen. How are you holding up? I replied, setting my coffee cup down. Oh, just taking it one day at a time, she said with a weary smile. Carmen, do you have a moment to chat? There's something I'd like to talk to you about, I said gently. Sure, let me just grab a quick break, she said, glancing at Joe, who nodded in approval. We found a quiet corner booth and sat down. Carmen looked at me curiously, waiting for me to speak. Carmen, I know this might seem a bit out of the blue, but I heard about your situation from Pastor Jim. I took your name off the Christmas tree at church. I want to help you and your kids this holiday season, I said, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment she looked as if she might cry, but she quickly composed herself and gave me a grateful smile. Dan, that's so kind of you. I don't even know what to say, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You don't have to say anything, Carmen. Just let me help make this Christmas special for you and your kids. We'll figure out the details together, I assured her. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she nodded. Thank you, Dan. You have no idea how much this means to us. As we sat there, discussing plans to make this Christmas one to remember for her family, I felt a warmth spread through me. It wasn't just about giving, it was about connecting, making a difference, and bringing joy to those who needed it most. And in that moment, I realized that perhaps, in helping Carmen and her children, I was also helping myself heal from the wounds of the past. I sat down at one of the tables and looked around. It was that quiet time between breakfast and lunch, so the diner was pretty sparse. I noticed Carmen bustling about, giving me a warm smile and saying she'd be right over. A little information about Carmen. She was in her early 30s, a pleasant-looking woman, though not conventionally beautiful. She was neat and attractive, with shoulder-length dark hair that framed her face nicely. She had nice legs and a bust that was noticeable but modest. She definitely wasn't thin, but she wasn't fat either. Describing her facial features was harder than I thought, but I knew for sure that she had a smile that could light up a room. "What can I do for you?" she asked as she approached. "Just a cup of coffee and some conversation, if you don't mind," I replied. "Sure, coffee is easy, but I'm not sure about the conversation part," she said cautiously. "I'm sorry if this seems forward. I'm not trying to flirt. I picked your name off the tree at church, and I want to be your friend for the holidays," I explained. "Look, I'm not really sure what you want. I'll just go get you some coffee," she said, looking a bit unsure. I watched as she went to talk to Joe, who gave her a reassuring nod. When she came back with my coffee, she seemed more relaxed. "Okay, Joe says you're fine. I get hit on by men quite often, and I don't need that in my life right now," she said, sitting down across from me. "So, what do you want? What's a holiday friend? I know the church put my kids' names on the tree so they could have Christmas, but they never talked about a friend." "Friend, this is my idea. Please let me explain. If you want me to just buy the kids a present, I can do that. But I was watching TV when a guy said that for $24 a month, I could sponsor a child in another country. They would feed them 3 times a day, give them clothes, schooling, and a roof over their head, all for $24 a month." Carmen laughed. "Dan, isn't it? My kids have $24 worth of milk a month. I can hardly make ends meet with more than that." She smiled again, and I realized it was one of the most beautiful smiles I had ever seen. "I know, I agree. That's why I decided I would be adopting a family from now until the holidays. I want to help you with your material needs through Thanksgiving and Christmas. I want your family to have a memorable Christmas. I am not rich, but I can spare enough money to try to help one family this year, and I want that family to be yours." Carmen's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. "That's incredibly kind of you, Dan. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just let me help make this holiday season special for you and your kids," I said, feeling a sense of purpose and warmth spread through me. We spent the next hour talking, getting to know each other better. Carmen told me about her kids, her struggles since moving to the town, and her hopes for the future. I shared a bit about my own life and how I came to this decision. As I left the diner, I felt a renewed sense of hope and fulfillment. This holiday season, I wasn't just giving, I was also healing, and in helping Carmen and her family, I found a new kind of joy that I hadn't felt in a long time. "And I have chosen yours." Carmen's eyes welled up with tears, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you serious? I was so worried about my kids this year. You see, my husband was." "I know, Carmen. He was murdered. Please, let me help you and your children. If you feel I'm interfering in your life, just tell me and I'll back off." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, confusion and curiosity etched on her face. "Don't you have family you could help? Not a stranger?" "Oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this," Carmen said, her voice trembling slightly. "Look, my kids and I are doing fine. We eat pretty well, but they like what the other kids have, and I just can't afford to buy it for them. You've seen our stupid TV with the crappy picture? I bought basic cables so they have something to watch. We buy our clothes secondhand, but they are happy with whatever they get. They are really great kids. I'm afraid to buy bikes or anything else we have to leave outside. I know they'll get stolen. So, Dan, take this to heart. My kids would love any gift. Okay, I'll see what I can do to help, I reassured her. Your children do seem very good. I turned to Mike, the oldest. Mike, since you're the oldest, don't you think everyone would like to go to the movies on Saturday? I heard there's a new Harry Potter movie coming out. Mike's eyes lit up. Wow, that would be great. Mom, can we go? Can we? Carmen smiled warmly at her son. I think so, but only if you kids behave yourselves for the rest of the week. Carmen, you know this is about you too. Maybe we'll eat at McDonald's while we're there, I added. Molly looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. I like McDonald's. They have Happy Meals and a playground and everything. All right, Molly, be a good girl for Mommy, and we'll go there on Saturday, I said, patting her head. The kids were ecstatic, and Carmen was smiling. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing I'd brought some joy into their lives. It continued like this for several weekends. We took the kids to various places where they could just have fun. I would go to Joe's restaurant for lunch and always sat in Carmen's area, leaving her generous tips, usually around $10 each time. Dan, you don't need to do that. Just make my kids happy. That's all I need, she said one day, blushing slightly. So you don't need the money? I teased with a smile. That's not fair, Dan. Sure, I can use the money. It's just, I feel awkward, to say the least. I feel indebted to you for everything you do for my kids. Can I make you guys Thanksgiving dinner or something? I need to do something for you too. Carmen, I do this for you because it gives me pleasure. I enjoy helping people who are trying to help themselves. Please don't feel that you owe me. Just seeing the look on the children's faces is more than enough payback. Besides, seeing you smile is a pleasure in itself. She looked down, clearly embarrassed, and busied herself with clearing the table. One weekend, Kaylee came home and asked me what was new. I told her about Carmen and how I had been helping her. Dad, do you think this is a good idea? You don't really know this woman, do you? Honey, it's given me a new sense of purpose. Helping someone and seeing the joy on those little faces makes me feel better about everything. I started the conversation with Carmen. I want you to meet Carmen and tell me what you think. Dad, I'm kind of uneasy about this. You say they live in a rough neighborhood? Isn't that a pretty dangerous place for a single woman and her kids? Exactly. That's why I'm trying to help them. Maybe it will help them get back on their feet. Kaylee, you've always been my little girl, and now you've grown into a beautiful woman. You don't need my help as much anymore, so I feel like I should help someone else. I'll tell you what. I'll have Carmen come over so you can meet her and the kids, and you give me your honest opinion. Okay, Dad, but no promises. I'll be as honest with you as I can be. I won't sugarcoat it. I knew Kaylee was a little worried. She had always been my rock and looked out for me. I trusted her judgment. On Saturday, I invited Carmen and the kids over to my house. It was a bit chilly, but I decided to grill anyway. While I cooked outside, Kaylee would have a chance to talk to Carmen inside. Carmen arrived in an old, beat-up car. She had all the kids buckled in and was already unbuckling their seatbelts when Kaylee glanced at me. Nice car, Dad, she said sarcastically. What makes you think I'm helping them? I replied. What would you say if she drove up in a new car? That's a great idea, Dad, Kaylee said with a grin. We spent the afternoon together, and Kaylee got to know Carmen and the kids. By the end of the day, she had warmed up to them. Dad, they're really sweet kids, and Carmen seems like a good person. I think you're doing a good thing helping them out. Her approval meant the world to me. I knew that helping Carmen and her family was the right thing to do, and I felt more determined than ever to make their holidays special. This is for you, Carmen smiled, handing Kaylee a gift bag. Mike and Mark ran up to me, their excitement palpable. Hey, Uncle Dan, wow, you guys live here? What a big house! They exclaimed in unison, their eyes wide with amazement. I introduced the boys to Kaylee as Carmen led Molly out of the car. Mike, Mark, this is my little girl, Kaylee. Hi, boys. Nice to meet you, Kaylee replied warmly. Mike took the lead. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm 8 and Mark is 6. This is Molly getting out of the car. She's our little sister. She's 4 years old. Molly walked over to me, and I lifted her into my arms. Kaylee watched me carefully, a slight smile on her lips. Molly is my little friend. She holds her own against her brothers, just like you did, Kaylee, I laughed, giving Molly a gentle squeeze. Carmen, this is Kaylee, my pride and joy and also my youngest daughter, I said, introducing them. As they greeted each other, I could almost feel the gears turning in their minds. Finally, Carmen smiled at Kaylee and said, "Look, I know it's different. I know you have tons of questions about who I am and what I'm doing here. I've been asking myself the same questions. Let's just enjoy this day, and I'll try to answer some of those questions. I think your father is one of the nicest people I've ever met. So show me the kitchen, and we can cook together." Men think that since they cook meat, grilling is a whole meal. We women know better. Kaylee looked at me and grinned. "I like her already, Daddy." They smiled at each other, and we headed into the house. The kids wanted to explore, so I told them it was okay, but to stay out of the drawers and not to run around. They went from room to room, returning excitedly to tell their mom about everything they saw. They asked if they could watch my big screen TV, and I suggested we go to the store to pick out a couple of DVDs to watch. Of course, they eagerly agreed, and Molly asked if she could come too. Carmen intervened. "Molly, why don't you stay here with me and Kaylee and help us cook? We girls need to stick together." Molly looked at me with her big, innocent eyes. "Uncle Dan, take the boys and go ahead. I have to help the girls cook." It was so funny to hear that from a 4-year-old. I promised to rent a movie just for her and ended up getting The Little Mermaid. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she watched it. She asked Kaylee and her mom to watch it with her and even told the boys they could join if they stayed quiet. It was adorable to see her trying to act like an adult. The girls decided that we would spend Thanksgiving at our house. Carmen and Kaylee would cook dinner, and I would keep the kids entertained, which wasn't too hard. Although the pool was closed for the winter, the hot tub was still available. The kids would bring their bathing suits and soak in it. Afterwards, they would watch movies on the big TV. We had over a month to plan Thanksgiving dinner. Kaylee said she would contact Jake and Alex to let them know about dinner at our house and tell them about Carmen and the kids. She would also remind them to bring their bathing suits if they wanted to use the hot tub. Later, I had a nice chat with Kaylee after Carmen and the kids went home. "Dad, Carmen is a very nice person. She is very sympathetic and isn't afraid of hard work. She told me about her past and about her husband's murder. It was horrible, everything she had to go through. I understand why you want to help her, especially with the children. She doesn't make excuses for her life, and you can see that she is really trying to keep it together. I have to tell you, Daddy, that I think she really cares about you." "Of course she will. I'm helping her and her family. I hope she'll be grateful to me, at least a little," I said. "No, Daddy, I mean care in the sense of really like, maybe even love," Kaylee clarified. "She didn't say that, did she?" "Dad, she didn't have to. We women can sense these things. I think you've fallen in love with her too, Daddy. All I ask is that you be very careful and considerate." "Come on, Kaylee, I'm just happy for her. This is the happiest I've seen you since Mom died over 2 years ago, Dad. I'm glad to see you happy. I just want you to be more aware of your situation." I knew Kaylee was right. I had feelings, strong feelings, for Carmen and the kids. I didn't know where they would lead, but I recognized it. I just didn't realize anyone else had noticed. I later got separate calls from Jake and Alex. They were both curious about Carmen and wanted to know more about her. I assured them that they would meet her soon and that I believed they would understand why I was helping her family. The following weeks were filled with preparations for Thanksgiving. Kaylee and Carmen bonded over cooking, and the kids grew more comfortable around each other. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, our house was buzzing with excitement and anticipation. As we all sat down to a beautifully prepared meal, I felt a deep sense of contentment. For the first time in a long while, my house felt like a home again, filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of family. I did my best to explain that I was helping Carmen during the holidays and that I had learned the family's name from the Christmas tree at church. I think I did a pretty good job of embellishing the situation. I explained to them that Carmen wanted to say thank you by helping prepare Thanksgiving dinner. I knew they were a little wary of the situation, but they agreed to come to dinner. For the next couple of weeks, Carmen and Kaylee helped organize all the events. They acted almost like sisters, with Carmen being the oldest and doing most of the planning. Of course, Kaylee went to school most of the week and came home on Fridays. I stopped by almost every day for lunch at the restaurant, mostly to see Carmen. At least twice a week, I stopped by her apartment to say hello to the kids and bring them some treats. Carmen told me that I spoiled them. I have to say it bothered me a little when I watched Carmen at her job. She was always so friendly and nice to everyone. I saw men hitting on her, but she always smiled and refused advances or dates. I guess it was natural for me to feel a pang of jealousy. I had no right to be jealous of her, even for dating, let alone being friendly with other people. Chapter 3 Change. On Thanksgiving Day, Carmen and her children arrived early. She looked absolutely beautiful. She wasn't dressed in any special way, but even in a simple skirt and blouse, she was a very attractive woman. She and Kaylee had already started cooking. Kaylee told us that she had invited her boyfriend to dinner as well. I had met him a few times. He was a paramedic and was still taking classes at the college where he met Kaylee, who was training to be a nurse. They were both part of a group going to England to help out at the hospital during the holidays. They would leave the week before Christmas and return home on January 8th the following year. It was less than a month before they left, and it would be sad not having her around during that time. Jake, his wife Gail, and my 2 grandchildren showed up next. I hugged them all, and the kids asked when they could go in the hot tub. I told them I wanted to introduce them to the other kids first. I introduced them to Mike, Mark, and Molly. All the kids seemed to get along great with each other. We walked to the kitchen, and Kaylee hugged her brother and started introducing him to Carmen. "Jake, Gail, this is Carmen, a good friend of Dad and me," she said warmly. I felt good when she said that. Jake said hello, but I knew the gears were turning in his head. Gail smiled and asked the girls if they needed help. "Actually, that would be wonderful," Carmen replied with a grateful smile. "There's still a lot to do." The atmosphere in the kitchen was lively and filled with the aroma of the Thanksgiving feast being prepared. Kaylee's boyfriend arrived shortly after, fitting right into the bustling scene. He greeted everyone with a friendly demeanor and offered to help wherever he could. As the day progressed, the house was filled with laughter and chatter. The children played together, occasionally coming into the kitchen to check on the progress of the meal or to sneak a taste of something delicious. The adults shared stories and reminisced, creating a warm and joyous atmosphere. When dinner was finally ready, we all gathered around the table. It was a beautiful spread, thanks to the hard work of Carmen, Kaylee, and Gail. As we held hands for a moment of gratitude, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of happiness and contentment. This was what Thanksgiving was all about: family, friends, and the joy of sharing a meal together. After dinner, the kids excitedly jumped into their bathing suits and headed for the hot tub. The adults sat back with coffee and dessert, enjoying the peaceful moment. Jake and Gail got to know Carmen better, and I could see their initial wariness fading away as they realized how genuine and kind-hearted she was. Later in the evening, as we all relaxed in the living room, Jake came over to me. "Dad, I have to admit, Carmen seems like a great person. I was a bit skeptical at first, but I can see why you wanted to help her. The kids are wonderful too. You've done a good thing here," he said, patting me on the back. "Thanks, Jake," I replied, feeling a sense of relief. I just wanted to make a difference for someone this year. It's nice to see it coming together so well. As the night drew to a close, Carmen gathered her kids to head home. She thanked everyone for the wonderful day, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you so much, Dan," she said, giving me a hug. "This has been the best Thanksgiving we've had in years. I can't tell you how much this means to us." "It was my pleasure, Carmen," I replied, hugging her back. "I'm glad you could join us." As I watched them drive away, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Helping Carmen and her kids had brought new meaning to my life, and I realized that sometimes the best way to heal our own wounds is by helping others heal theirs. "Look, my wife died 2 years ago in a car accident," I explained, my voice softening. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she replied, genuine sympathy in her eyes. It's okay, Carmen. My holidays have been pretty lonely, and I wanted to try to help someone else be happy this year. I have three grown children. My son is in his 30s, and my daughter, I think, is 29. They are both married and have families of their own. My youngest daughter is a college graduate who is going to England for Christmas. None of them are in financial difficulty. So what do you say? Shall we be friends for the holidays? She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. You have a kind face, Dan. For the sake of my children, I'll say yes. But please, no tricks. My family and I have been through a lot in the last year. So what do you want from me? I think it's a good idea to start by restocking your coffee and getting an idea of some of your needs, I suggested. She poured more coffee, nodding thoughtfully. Okay, but I need to get back to work. Joe is nice, but I need to do my job. We agreed to talk after she finished work the next day. I asked her out to dinner, but she said she needed to be around the kids. However, she invited me to her house and mentioned I could join them for dinner if I liked macaroni and cheese. Tell you what, Carmen, I'll pick up some pizza and we can eat that instead. Pepperoni and cheese, okay? She smiled warmly. That would be great, but you better bring 2 pizzas. My 8-year-old can eat half of one by himself. That evening, I made my way to her place. As I approached the project housing, I felt a pang of determination. These places were often the last refuge for families trying to make ends meet, places where the struggle was palpable, but so was the community spirit. I was greeted at the door by her 8-year-old son, a bright-eyed boy with a big smile. What do you want? He asked. I'm the pizza delivery guy, I said with a grin. Your mom invited me over. His eyes lit up. Mom said her friend is bringing us pizza today. We don't get pizza from the store very often. As I stepped inside, 2 other children ran up to me, chanting, Pizza, pizza, pizza! Mommy, the pizza man is here! A 6-year-old shouted. Carmen entered the room, looking slightly flustered but smiling. Children, where are your manners? I thought I taught you how to behave in company. Sorry, Mom, we were just a little excited, her oldest son said, looking sheepish. We don't get visitors very often. Can we have pizza already? Kids, this is Dan, a friend of mine. You can call him Uncle Dan or Mr. Dan, Carmen introduced. I interrupted her gently. Or just call me Dan. What's your name? The oldest spoke first. My name is Mike, and I'm 8 years old. Then the second one chimed in. I'm Mark, and I'm 6 years old. This is my little sister Molly. I can tell you myself, Molly said proudly. My name is Molly, and I am 4 years old, soon to be 5. I go to kindergarten, and I am very smart. She was the sweetest little girl, with a spark in her eyes that reminded me of Carmen. We all sat down at the table and started eating pizza. As I looked around the room, it was clear that this family was doing their best with what they had. The furniture was old and worn, and they didn't seem to have much in the way of possessions. The TV was on, but the picture quality was poor. While the kids devoured their pizza and watched cartoons, I turned to Carmen. What kind of help would you like? I asked. She hesitated for a moment before replying. Honestly, anything would be a blessing. We could use some new clothes, maybe some toys for the kids, and anything to make this place feel more like home. Consider it done, I said with a smile. Let's make this a holiday season to remember. And so began my journey with Carmen and her children, a journey that brought joy, healing, and a sense of purpose to my life that I hadn't felt in a long time. No sooner had everyone gotten back to cooking than Alex and her husband Rob came in. We started getting reacquainted, and Alex's kids ran down to the basement to play with the other kids. In the basement, we had a lot of games, coloring books, and things like that for the kids. It had been completely remodeled and had a TV and DVD player, so there was plenty for the kids to do. The women went back to cooking, and we guys tried to stay out of their way. I knew the guys wanted to know more about Carmen. I tried to explain her story to them without showing my feelings. I guess I wasn't very good at it. She looks good, Daddy, Jake observed. How old is she? About the same age as me. She's 31 years old, Jake. She's a wonderful person and deserves a little help, I replied, trying to keep it casual. Rob chimed in. Daddy, he always called me Daddy. Aren't you afraid she might fall in love with you or you with her? Look, I'm a widower, and she's a widow. Of course she's much younger, but if something happens, so be it, I said, feeling a bit defensive. Dad, you haven't been with her? Jake asked, his curiosity piqued. This is kind of inappropriate and definitely personal, Jake. Since you're my son, I'll tell you. No, believe it or not, I didn't even try to kiss her. I'll tell you right now that she's a wonderful woman and I care about her, I said firmly. I'm sorry, Dad. I know it's none of my business and you must miss Mom. After all, it's been 2 years, Jake said, backing off a bit. This has nothing to do with your mother. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a very lively person, and if I find someone attractive, that's my business. I suggest we change the subject. And actually, we'd better go check on all the kids. Your wives are cooking, and you two had better babysit, I said, trying to shift the conversation. We went downstairs and watched the kids. Carmen's children seemed to get along fine with each other. Every few minutes, Molly came up to me to talk. I knew it bothered Jake, but Rob thought she was the sweetest little girl. Kaylee went downstairs and brought her boyfriend Ross down to introduce him to everyone. I've met him a few times, and I think he's met Jake before. After introductions, Kaylee went back upstairs, and Ross joined the conversation. I just met Kaylee's friend Carmen. She's a very nice woman. Kaylee told me that her husband was murdered. That's too bad, Ross said sympathetically. I called Carmen's kids over and introduced them to Ross. Good kids? Too bad their father was killed. I think it's great that you're helping them, Mr. Weller, Ross said. Thank you, Ross. I picked a name off the tree at church, and I actually found a family in great need, I said, not wanting anyone to know that I had asked Pastor Jim to find a certain type of family. So, Ross, what's new with you? School and work must be taking up a lot of your time, I said, changing the subject. Yes, that's true, but we're going on a trip in a couple weeks, although it's work-related. I'll have a chance to get away for a while and be with Kaylee, Ross replied. How are you and Kaylee doing? Jake asked. Ross looked at me, then back at Jake. I love her, and I'm thinking of asking her to marry me when we're in England, in front of Big Ben, you know, the big clock. Mr. Weller, do I have your permission to propose to her? Ross, you don't need my permission. Kaylee is a strong-willed woman and quite capable of making her own decisions. If you need my blessing, you'll get it, I said, feeling a sense of pride. Is that a sure thing? Should I ask her? Ross asked, looking for reassurance. I think so, but please none of you mention it just in case. I will try to find out if she is ready to get married before I pop the question. I love her, but I want a yes answer, he replied. Our lips are sealed, Ross, and good luck to you, I said, understanding how he felt. Truth be told, I felt the same way he did, but I knew it was best not to talk about it right now. The afternoon went wonderfully. Dinner was fantastic, and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. The kids took turns swimming in the hot tub. I couldn't get any of the adults to go in it. Carmen told me, maybe another time. I knew I would hold her to that. As the evening wore on, Kaylee and Ross left to be alone. I helped Carmen clean the house. Alex and Gail came over and helped. When we were done, Jake and his family were just about to leave. Jake told Carmen that it was nice to meet her and wished her luck. He hoped everything would work out for her. Before leaving, Alex pulled me aside. Daddy, Carmen is a good person, but she's too young for you. Where did that come from? I'm helping her, I replied, surprised by her comment. Dad, she loves you. Any fool can see that. We asked her if she was dating, and she said she had a boyfriend. Daddy, you are that boyfriend. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come here today. Just be careful, Dad, Alex said, her concern evident. I hear you, Alex. Thanks for looking out for me, I said, feeling a mix of emotions. As they left, I couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. The warmth and joy that filled the house made me realize how much I missed having a family around. Carmen and her kids had brought a new light into my life, and for that, I was deeply grateful. After everyone left, Carmen gathered the kids and told me she had a great time. She liked my family and thought they were all nice. I don't know why I did it, but I leaned forward and kissed her. It was a long, soft kiss. When we pulled away, tears came to her eyes. You didn't have to do that, Dan. I have to go, she said, her voice shaky. She picked up the kids, who quickly said goodbye to me and got into the car. I went to the car window and said to Carmen, I'm sorry. I stepped out of line. Please forgive me. The problem is, Dan, I've wanted you to do this for so long, she confessed, her voice filled with longing. With those words, she pulled her old car off the road and headed home. I didn't hear from her on Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday. I was worried about what I had done. On Monday, I went to the restaurant, but she wasn't there. Joe told me that she had to take Molly to daycare today and would be back in a little while. I had to stop by the store and decided to come back at lunchtime, but one of my employees was sick and I had to stay and work my shift. I tried to give Carmen some space after I crossed the line. After all, I was supposed to be a holiday friend, not her lover. I got home and then my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw that it was Carmen. "Hi, Carmen. I'm so sorry," I started, but she cut me off. "Dan, our apartment was broken into. I just got home from taking the kids and someone took our stuff. Even the old TV. All we have left are our clothes," she cried. "I don't know what to do. The police are here now taking a report. They thought it was someone looking for things to pawn for drugs. We don't have anything of value, but they took what little we had." God, how awful it was to hear her cry. "Carmen, get your suitcases or bags or something and put your and the kids' clothes in there. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Everything will be fine. I promise you." "Dan, I didn't know who else," she said, her voice breaking. "It's okay, Carmen. I'm glad I was the one you called. Now go pack your things and I'll be there soon." I took the car and went to get Carmen and the kids. Molly was crying and said she was scared. I told her everything was going to be okay. I would take them all back to my house. Carmen looked up at me in surprise. "I thought you were dropping us off at a motel for the night." "No, you're all going home with me. Put all the stuff you packed in your car. Take my car and the kids. I'll drive yours with your stuff." She didn't ask any questions. She just did what I said. I talked to the police officer and told him they could contact her at my house. I gave him my phone number if he needed to contact us. He told me that they probably wouldn't get any of her stuff back. She didn't list anything of real value that they could trace. All they did was trash the apartment pretty badly. I thanked the officer, got into Carmen's clunker, and tried to start it. I was unable to start it. The officer helped me start it, and I headed home. When I arrived, Carmen and the children were sitting on the porch. "It's open. Why didn't you come in?" I asked. "You weren't here, and we weren't just going to walk in," Carmen replied. "Come on, boys. Help me get all these bags in. Mike, you and Mark, take your stuff to the bedroom with the bunk beds. If it's Molly's stuff or your mom's stuff, put it in the front bedroom, the one across from Kaylee's room. You know which one." "Yes, sir. The boys' stuff is upstairs. The girls' stuff is downstairs. If you're not sure, put it in the living room and your mom will decide for herself." "Carmen, you need to come and talk to me. Molly, why don't you help the boys and make sure they do it right?" Of course, Molly liked her job of telling the boys what to do. "Dan, what are you doing? We can't live here. What will your kids think?" Carmen asked, her voice filled with concern. "Carmen, you need help right now today. Let's try to do this my way for a few days. That will give us time to figure out what to do. You and Molly can share the front bedroom, and the boys will be more than comfortable upstairs. Dan, the boys have school, and Molly has kindergarten. I have to work. And how does living here get in the way of that? You just have to leave about 15 minutes early. I can help too. I'll drive Molly or the boys to school. Call them tomorrow and explain that your house was broken into and that you'll be driving the boys to school. I'll help you out." Carmen looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and uncertainty. "Dan, this is too much. You've done so much for us already." "Nonsense, Carmen. You and your kids deserve a safe place to stay. Let's just get through this one step at a time. We'll figure it all out, I promise." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Thank you, Dan. I don't know what we would have done without you." "You're welcome, Carmen. Now let's get settled in and make this work." With that, we started unpacking their things and settling them into my home. It felt right having them there, and I knew that together we could overcome anything. "Give my name so I can drop them off and pick them up. It'll work out, Carmen, I promise." "Dan, I care about you. I like you a lot. Your kids know that, and I need you to know that." "Did you tell them?" I asked, surprised. "No, women just know it. Men, I don't know. Men think differently. I don't know about your son, Jake, but Kaylee, Alex, and Gail all know. I'm sorry. It's not just something I can hide. I wear my feelings on my sleeve, I guess. I'll worry about my kids. You already have enough to worry about." "Oh, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry I kissed you. Just thought you should know. I went upstairs where the boys slept, made sure the dresser drawers were empty, and Carmen helped the boys lay out their clothes. While they were doing that, little Molly and I went downstairs and emptied the dresser drawers in their room. I was glad I had taken my wife's things after she died. It made the task much easier. Everyone came into the room with Molly and me. Molly asked her mom if she could put her things in the drawers. I took the boys, and we went to find something for dinner while Carmen put away her personal belongings. The boys and I made hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. When everything was ready, we sat and talked while we ate. Carmen asked me about the rules of behavior in the house. I told her that we would establish them as we went along. We told the kids that they needed permission to do anything they wanted to do until we set the rules. They were told they could not enter my room or office without an invitation. They were not allowed near the pool at all. It was closed, but they were still children. We made sure they understood they could drown. They could only go in the hot tub with permission from mom or me. It wasn't supposed to be a daily event. They could only watch TV with permission from mom or me. It was their responsibility to keep their room clean. Carmen laughed, knowing the boys weren't the neatest. At least the rules were set. I looked at the boys and Molly, who was always smiling at me. Kids, this is your home now. You can be kids and have fun. Just remember to always ask your mom for permission if you're not sure what you should do. Uncle Dan, what if we get hungry? Mike asked. Eat. That's what I do when I get hungry. Tomorrow, Mommy and I will buy you snacks. You will always have food. Just remember, when it comes to food, your mom is the boss. One more thing, and I mean this. If your mom says no, don't come and ask me. If I say no, don't put your mom on the spot. No means no. Any other questions? Molly raised her hand. It made me laugh. I guessed she'd learned it in kindergarten. What, honey? Carmen asked. Are we allowed to play with the toys in the basement because they're not ours? Honey, you can play with all the toys we have downstairs. We'll talk to Santa this year, and he'll probably get you some of your own, I told Molly. Molly raised her hand again. Can I go play with them? Yes, honey, you go ahead. I'll come down and be with you in a little while, Carmen said. Molly stood up and headed downstairs. Not 10 seconds later, the boys followed her downstairs. One of the boys shouted upstairs, Uncle Dan, can we turn on the TV? I only shouted back, yeah, go ahead, just not too loud. Carmen came over to me and hugged me. There were tears in her eyes, and she said, I don't know what I would have done if it hadn't been for you. She pulled away and wiped the tears from her eyes. We didn't kiss or hug again. I knew I had to say something without being funny or too serious. I squeezed her hands and said, I'll always be here for you. Let's go see what the kids are doing. Together, we headed down to the basement to join the kids. It felt like a family. I remembered Annie and I doing the same thing, sitting and watching the kids play. It felt so right. It was getting late, and Carmen told the children that they should take a bath and get ready for bed. Carmen got up and announced, All right, everyone, it's time to get ready for bed. Let's go get those baths taken care of. The kids groaned, but didn't argue. They all headed upstairs, with Molly grabbing my hand and pulling me along. I helped Carmen get the bath set up, making sure there were enough towels and clean pajamas for everyone. After the baths were done and the kids were settled into their new beds, Carmen and I finally had a moment to ourselves. We sat on the porch, enjoying the cool night air. Carmen looked at me and smiled. Thank you, Dan, for everything. You're welcome, Carmen. I'm just glad I can help. You and the kids deserve it. She leaned in and rested her head on my shoulder. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. It felt peaceful, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. There were 3 bathrooms in the big house. Carmen asked the boys to use the one upstairs and inquired if Molly could use the main bathroom on the first floor. Carmen, this is your home now, I assured her. Of course Molly can use the big tub and shower. I'll use the shower in the basement if I need to. Please, make yourself at home. While Carmen got the kids ready for bed, I retreated to my office to work on my books. As I was engrossed in my work, I noticed Molly peeking at me through the doorway. She was dressed in her little nightgown, her hair still damp from the shower. "Hi, Molly. Do you need anything?" I asked, smiling. "I want to kiss you goodnight, but Mom said I can't go into your office until you say so," she replied, hesitantly. "Come on in, sweetie." Molly ran into the room, and I had to lean back in my chair as she climbed into my lap. She wrapped her little arms around my neck and kissed my cheek. "Good night, Uncle Dan," she said. "Good night, sweetheart. Where's Mommy?" "She's upstairs arguing with Mikey and Marky." "Well, let's go see if we can help," I suggested. Molly scampered up the stairs, and I followed her. We found Carmen and the boys in the middle of a heated discussion. "But Mom, Mike always gets his way because he's older," Mark complained. "I just asked for the top bunk, and he said he's older, so he gets his pick." Carmen looked at Mike sternly. "Is that what you said, Mike? Did you say you get everything first because you're older?" "Yeah, I guess, but I'm older, Mom, and I need to be treated like I'm older," Mike replied defensively. "Mike, you're 2 years older than your brother. That should make you 2 years smarter. Do you think it's worth arguing about which bed you sleep in? I'll tell you what. He's your little brother, and he's always looking up to you. Come up with a plan to share the top bed, and you can both agree." Mike looked at Mark thoughtfully. "Okay, Mark, I'll tell you what. You can have the top bunk this month, and next month I'll have it. We'll alternate and swap every month. Is that okay with you?" "Yeah, thanks, Mike. You're a great big brother," Mark said, climbing into the top bunk. "You feel good inside, don't you, Mike?" Carmen asked. "Yeah, I guess it does, Mom," Mike admitted. Carmen kissed her sons goodnight, and we headed downstairs to put Molly to bed. "I have to get back to my papers," I said. "And I need to shower and get ready for bed myself," Carmen replied. I returned to my office and soon heard the shower running. I couldn't help but think of Carmen in the shower. When the water stopped, Carmen emerged in her nightgown and robe, her hair still wet. "Good night, Dan, and thank you again for everything," she said softly. I looked up and couldn't help but compliment her. "Is there anything you don't look good in?" She smiled and headed for bed, her scent lingering in the air. I took a deep breath and got back to my books. The next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Carmen asked me to call Joe and let him know she might be a little late. She needed to stop by the school and daycare to update them about the new pickup arrangements and file a change of address. I called Joe, who asked if I was serious about Carmen, expressing his concern for her. I assured him that I would never hurt her or the kids and that I had genuine feelings for them. That evening, we went back to her old apartment to pack up everything she wanted to keep, which wasn't much. She turned in her keys and informed the office that she had moved out due to the break-in. Mike and Mark came with me in the truck, while Carmen and Molly followed in her old car. When we returned home, the phone rang. Carmen answered, and it was Kaylee. She asked Carmen why she was at the house, and Carmen explained the situation. Kaylee then asked to speak to me. "Dad, are you sure about this? You know she loves you, right? What do you think I should have done, Kaylee? Just give her some money and say, 'Go and manage on your own'? I care about her, you know that." "Dad, I'm not saying you shouldn't help her. I just want you to be careful. You're getting attached, and I don't want to see you hurt again." "I understand, Kaylee, but right now, this feels right. They need help, and I want to be there for them." "Okay, Dad, just promise me you'll take things slow and be cautious." "I promise, Kaylee. Thanks for looking out for me." After the call, I joined Carmen and the kids in the living room. We sat together, talking and laughing as the evening wore on. It felt like a real family, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly content. We're adults, and we haven't done anything wrong. I'm actually very pleased that she and the kids are here. It's almost like the good old days. I just want to say, Dad, that it's a fine line you walk. I really like Carmen as a sister, you know that. I'm just saying that you two need to be careful and realize what you're doing. Now, can I talk to Carmen again?" She talked to Carmen, and they talked for about 20 minutes, while the boys and I took the rest of the stuff into the house and put it away or stored it in the basement. "What did she want after I gave you your phone back?" I asked. "It's mostly girl stuff, but she's worried about you and me." "What's there to worry about? My God, we're adults. For crying out loud, I'm in my 50s, and I've gotten this far. I'm sure I can make good decisions for a decrepit old man who has no mind of his own." Dan, she knows how much I care about you. I told her that myself, and now you know. I tried to explain that I had no idea where this was going, but you helped me and the kids. I am eternally grateful to you for that. But my feelings overpowered my gratitude. Kaylee is worried that one of us will get hurt in this relationship. I told her I would never come between you and your family. Okay, let's just keep living one day at a time. Maybe time is the answer. Just then, Mike and Mark walked in. Uncle Dan, can we all go in the hot tub? I looked at Carmen and then back at the kids. Only if your mom comes in. I don't want you kids going in there alone. Come on, Mom. Please come in, please. We're begging you, Mom. You're going to love it. It's warm and nice and lots of bubbles. Please, Mommy. Okay, boys. I'm going to be gone for a while. Go and get your costumes on. Molly, go get yours, and I'll be right there. She turned to me. You're the one who set me up, aren't you? I just smiled, and she smiled back. She went and put on a two-piece swimsuit. Are you happy now? She asked as she walked past me and smiled. Very much so. You look good in anything. I bet you even look good naked, I smiled. Pervert, she replied, smiling as she walked toward the hot tub. The kids were already waiting for her. Damn, she looks so much prettier, I thought as she climbed into the tub. This woman has everything. After a few minutes, I handed Carmen the drink. She smiled and said, The water is really nice. My sick body really needed it. The kids just sat there and watched the bubbles bounce off of them. Get your personal belongings out and put everything in this garbage bag. We'll go through it later. Dan, what am I supposed to drive? We'll talk later. We have to hurry to get the kids in time. She stowed all of her personal belongings in the truck, along with the rest of her shoes and baby toys. We signed the title and got $300 for the clunker. After picking up Molly's car seat, we headed home. I opened the garage door and told Carmen she could drive my old car. It only had 8,000 miles on it and was 4 years old. I had bought it with the insurance money I received after Annie's car accident. Needless to say, her car was totaled. I usually drove the truck, so the car was rarely used. The only time I drove it was to take Carmen and the kids out. Carmen put Molly's car seat in the car and left to get the kids. When they got back, Mark excitedly told me, We got a new car. It's much nicer than Mom's old one. Dan, I'll pay you for the car, Carmen insisted. How much do you want? Carmen, just drive the damn car. You need something better, and this is a damn good car. That way I'll keep it in my name and keep paying the insurance. It'll save you a few more bucks. Dan, I don't want to say this, but what if we don't stay together? You know, if I move somewhere else. Are you thinking of moving? God, no. I was just wondering what I'd do with the car if you kicked us out. God, Carmen, I never meant to give the impression that I was leaving. I'm sorry. I couldn't believe this was the first time we had a fight over that stupid car. Carmen, I promise you that you will never be without a car. If you want me to put it in writing, I will. I was just worried about you and this old car. I want you to be safe and hear me out. I couldn't believe it, but she came up to me and kissed me. I didn't know if it was an impulse or what, but it felt good. Molly looked at her brothers and said, Mom just kissed Uncle Dan. Kids, it was a thank you for letting us use his car. No, kids, it's your mother's car now, not mine. She kissed me because I gave her the car. Carmen turned around and kissed me again. Okay, everyone, time to get ready for dinner. Dan, I don't want to say this, but what if we don't stay together? You know, if I move somewhere else. Are you thinking of moving? God, no. I was just wondering what I'd do with the car if you kicked us out. God, Dan, I never meant to give the impression that I was leaving. I'm sorry. I couldn't believe this was the first time we had a fight over that stupid car. Carmen, I promise you that you will never be without a car. If you want me to put it in writing, I will. I was just worried about you and this old car. I want you to be safe and hear me out. I couldn't believe it, but she came up to me and kissed me. I didn't know if it was an impulse or what, but it felt good. Molly looked at her brothers and said, Mom just kissed Uncle Dan. Kids, it was a thank you for letting us use his car. No, kids, it's your mother's car now, not mine. She kissed me because I gave her the car. Carmen turned around and kissed me again. Okay, everyone, time to get ready for dinner. Do you want me to cook for you, or do you want Mom to drive us all to McDonald's in her new car? McDonald's, everyone shouted. Chapter 4. Shit Hits the Fan. I was at the store on Friday, and of course Carmen was at work. My kids Jake, Alex, and Kaylee came into the store to see me. Daddy, we need to talk to you. Can we all go over to your house for a little while? It was more of a statement than a question. Sure, go home. I'll be there in a few minutes. Just let me in. I knew what this was about, and I was pretty much ready for it. I headed home and walked into the house. Everyone, my 3 kids, was sitting in the living room. Dad, this is about Carmen and her kids. It looked like Jake was going to be the spokesman for the group. Holy shit, Jake. It took you 2 hours to drive here for this conversation. I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to. I've already guessed why. What the hell did Carmen do that you dislike her so much? She doesn't disgust me, Dad. It's just that one day you're helping her, and the next day she's living here with her kids. I noticed your car is gone too. I take it you gave it to Carmen to drive. Since you are my children, I will take the time to try to explain this to you. But before I begin, I want to tell you that I'm rather disappointed in all of you. Dad, I think this woman is using you. I think you're lonely, Mom. And then this woman comes along, and you fall in love with her, and she feels it. She knows you have needs, and she meets them. You fell in love with her, and now she knows she's got it all worked out. And her kids are well taken care of. Kaylee jumped up. Bullshit, Jake. You may think that, but I know Carmen a lot better than you do. She would never do that to Daddy. I feel like she just doesn't care about you. I feel like she just loves him, and to be honest, I think Daddy loves her too. I'm here more to support Daddy and Carmen than you, Jake. Jake, if you weren't my son, I'd probably knock you off your chair. Let's start with Carmen breaking into the house. What do you think I should have done, Jake? Give her money? Maybe avoid her and tell her it's her problem. Jake, I did what my heart thought was right, not my groin. Alex spoke up. Daddy, are you telling me that you never had sex? No, Carmen and I have never been intimate. Yet. Not that it's any of you guys' business what we do. Now for the big surprise, I'm thinking of asking Carmen to marry me. What? Jake said. Dad, you hardly know this woman. She's got a lot of baggage, not to mention 3 kids. Dad, I have to agree with Jake. Carmen is closer to my age. Isn't she awfully young for you? Alex asked. Look guys, I'm on my own. All 3 of you are on your own, or almost on your own, as far as Kaylee is concerned. I found a woman I care about, and according to Kaylee and of course Carmen, she cares about me. I have a large house that I am willing to share with a beautiful woman and her 3 children. Why are you so against it? Jake spoke up. Okay, Dad, let's say you 2 love each other and want to be together. She has 3 young children. Do you really want to start over and raise 3 more kids? I'm crazy about 3 kids, playing with the boys like you and I did with Jake. Molly hugs me and sits on my lap like my 2 girls did when they were little. They are good kids, and I think I can make a big difference in their lives. Dad, you're looking through rose-colored glasses. These are not your children. They're not your flesh and blood like we are. Do you really think you can take care of and raise these kids for the next, say, 20 years? And they're not even your own flesh and blood. I'm sorry, Dad, but I don't think you want to spend that many years raising children who aren't even yours. What do you think, Alex? Do you think they should be my flesh and blood too? Daddy, I don't know. I love you, Daddy, and you will always be my father. Will you be able to raise someone else's child? I really don't know. Alex, let me phrase it differently. You would have loved me all your life if I hadn't been your father. Of course, you've known that since you could think for yourself. Would you consider me your father, or would you consider someone else your father? You're my father, and it's too hypothetical. I don't know what I would think. I guess, since you've been paying my bills all my life and raising me as your own, I'd consider you my real father. I don't know what that has to do with you raising Carmen's kids. I'll be back in a minute. I have something to show you. I went back and got all the DNA tests that had been done for us. When I came back, I tried to explain some of it to the children. Mom and I have been keeping some secrets from you. We were never going to tell you about what I'm about to show you. It might even be a mistake to show you now, but this thing with Carmen's kids has gotten out of hand. I love those babies, and I know I could be a good father to them. I'm going to show you my reason right now. I handed each of them copies of their and my DNA. What is it, Daddy? Alex asked. These are the results of Jake and your DNA test. See, it says here that you are brother and sister. That means you have the same biological parents. And here are Kaylee's results. And as you can see, not all of the same blocks are marked here. That means it's likely that only one of her parents is likely to be yours and Jake's. Kaylee began to cry. Are you telling me you're not my biological father? No, Kaylee, here's my DNA. I'm not Jake's or Alex's biological father. Everyone was completely shocked. There was complete silence while their brains digested the information they had received. What? Jake shrieked. Bullshit. You've always been my father. Alex cried. Is that why you asked me about my father, Daddy? Now I can answer honestly. You are my father. I don't care what some stupid test said. You are my father and always will be. I love you so much, Dad. I just came here today to tell you that I hope you didn't make a mistake with Carmen. I'm so confused, Dad. I just want you to be happy. I thought I was taking care of you. She was still crying, and I hugged her. Kaylee walked over and cried with her, for it was her sister. Jake asked, are you going to tell us the story about our sperm donor father and how long you've known about it? First, Jake, I want you and Alex to know that I have always considered the two of you my children. From the moment I found out until now, nothing has changed except what you both know. You were and always will be my son, and Alex will always be my daughter. I tell you this because you should know that it's not just blood that holds a family together. It's also love and compassion. I was going to tell them the story about their sperm donor father. The only thing I was going to change was telling them when I found out. I loved them like my own family, and I wanted them to believe that I always knew about it. The routine with their mother was dead and gone, and I didn't want them to know we were going to divorce. Your mother and I were married very early on. Me and a guy named Harvey Kittle both loved your mother. Harvey also loved a woman named Mary, got her pregnant, and they got married. Of course, I was happy to have your mother to myself and asked her to marry me. We got married, and I was very happy. A few years later, your mom told me that she had married the evil Harvey. The four of us stayed friends, and your mom got pregnant. That was with you, Jake. 2 years later, she got pregnant again with Alex. Shortly after Alex was born, Harvey died, and your mom became depressed. One day, she broke down and told me about you two being Harvey's kids. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. We broke up for about a month to give ourselves time to process things. I missed my 2 young children. Annie and I talked and decided to give it a try. After that, your mom became the best wife a man could ever dream of. She fell in love with me, and I always loved you as if you were my own children. Then Kaylee came along, and Annie said she was definitely mine. And that was it. You all know how we lived after that. We had a wonderful family until your mom had her accident. Daddy, why did you take the test to give me a kidney if you weren't my birth father? Hope, Jake. I hoped and prayed to God that I was a match for you. You were my son, and I would give you my kidney in a second if we were a match. Janet asks, Dad, did you ever take a match test before Jake went into the hospital? No, it was very expensive at the time, and I had no reason to do it. Since your mom had already told me the truth, there were no surprises. Of course, when I took the test, there was no doubt, but I wasn't surprised. By the way, I have the test results of all your families. Jake, you and Gail are the biological parents of your children. Alex, you and Rob are also the parents of your children. Just in case you wanted to know, now that we've talked about it, you don't need to tell anyone about this conversation. Your mother was a good mother and wife. Let's just leave it at that. I'm sorry, Dad, I made such a fool of myself. I guess I was thinking more about how it would affect us than how it would affect you and Carmen. At those words, my son began to cry. I hadn't seen him this emotional since his mother's funeral. Jake, I know that in situations like this, people are always worried about their inheritance. It's not a good thing, but that's how real life is. I think you guys are more worried about your inheritance than Carmen and my well-being. I think reality set in when I saw Jake and Alex looking at the floor. Look, you 3 will always be in my will. My estate is arranged so that each of you will get a fair share. I just want you to know that I am disappointed that you have not shown compassion for Carmen and her children. Alex was still crying. I think the thought of her not being my daughter overpowered even the thought of inheritance. Alex kept hugging me and telling me that she didn't believe the stupid test, that I was her father, and that I would continue to be. I just hugged her back and snuggled up to her. I started to hug Kaylee when Carmen pulled up. Well, guys, looks like we're all going out to dinner. Unless you want to tell Carmen why you're all here, I said. Carmen walked in. Hello, everyone. What brings everyone here? Kaylee thought quickly. It's my last day off from home, and we all decided to go out to dinner. Oh God, that would be great. Give me a minute to change into my waitress uniform. Kids talk to Kaylee, Alex, and Jake while Mom gets dressed. Molly walked over to the seated Jake and gave him a hug. Hi, Jake. I like you. Jake looked at me. It had gotten to him what I was talking about. Mike walked over to Alex and asked, You brought your kids so we can play. We are learning to share our toys better. Alex replied, No, honey, they're home. Maybe you can come over after Christmas and see them. May I, Uncle Dan, please? I've never been to their house. We'll see, Mike. It's still a couple weeks away, I replied. Kaylee asked Mark what new things had happened. We bought a new car, and Mom kissed Uncle Dan. Everyone was looking at me. Carmen walked in and saved the day. Yes, Mike, I kissed him twice for letting us use the car. In fact, we're going to use it right now to drive to dinner. Come on, kids, get back in the car. Uncle Dan will be driving, so you all have to sit in the back. After we ate, Jake came over to us and we talked privately. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm a fool. I shouldn't have questioned you. No, you're right to wonder about what might affect you, Jake. It's just the way you did it. I want you to question my actions if they bother you a lot. We'll discuss this like father and son until we understand each other. He smiled when I said father and son. Later, I talked about it with Alex too. I wanted my children to always know that I was there for them. To this day, I don't know if I made the right decision in telling them, but it was done. Kaylee asked if I would babysit because she wanted to go Christmas shopping with Carmen. I asked if they could grab something for me too. I gave them a list and hopefully enough money. I told them they could leave the items in storage and I would pick them up later. I wanted to buy the kids' bicycles. Every kid should have a bike, and they now lived in a neighborhood where they could ride them. I pulled Carmen aside. Do you need money for shopping? No, I'm not shopping for myself. Just for you and the kids for Christmas. I got this $300 when my friend sold my old car. I knew she was too proud to take more money. She wanted to give the kids nice things without spoiling them. That wasn't easy to do. I asked Carmen if I could use her car to take the kids shopping, and she laughed. Just be careful with it and don't eat in it. I only got it a few days ago. She smiled. I took the kids to see Santa and take pictures with him. I told all three of them that we are shopping for Mom for Christmas. They can pick out the gift they want to give her. Uncle Dan, Mark said, I don't have any money. I want to buy my mom something nice. Okay, kids, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give each of you $20 for shopping. It's only for your mom, not for yourselves. So look for things that cost less than $20. Uncle Dan, can we carry the money ourselves? Mike asked. Okay, but keep it in your pocket so you don't lose it. Only take it out when you're ready to pay for the gift. I gave each boy a $20 bill, and they folded them up and put them in their pocket. Molly had a little purse with her junk in it, and we found a place in it for her money. Of course, the kids had no idea what money was and were looking at very expensive things. Seeing that this wasn't too good, I took them to a store geared towards kids. They walked the kids around the store and showed them what they could buy with the money they had. I told the clerk that if they wanted to buy anything extra, to let me know. I couldn't believe how hard these little ones were working to find the right thing for their mom. The oldest Mike came up to me and asked if I would lend him $5. Uncle Dan, Mom loves unicorns and he costs $25. Could you lend me the difference? Well, Mike, you said on loan. That means you have to pay me back. I'll offer you a deal. I'll give you the difference and you wash my truck. Deal? Thank you, Uncle Dan. And ran back to buy the unicorn. Mark was watching movies. I walked up to him and said, Mark, you're supposed to be shopping for your mom. Yes, Uncle Dan. Mom likes Titanic, the story about the ship. She also likes the movie Shrek. It made her laugh. I don't have enough money for both movies, and I'm trying to decide which one to buy. Take them both, Mark. Here's the extra money you'll need. When Mike washes my truck, you have to help him. Thanks, Uncle Dan. Mom will like them. I looked at the woman trying to help Molly. Molly continued to shake her head negatively. What's the matter, Molly? Can't you find what you need? None of them smell like Mom. I want one that smells like her. I looked at the saleswoman and whispered, White diamonds. She whispered back to me, Sir, the little girl has only $20 and the white diamonds are worth $50. Tell her you have a special offer on this bottle and she can have it for $20 and I'll give you the difference. Molly, said the saleswoman, I have a bottle of perfume. Does it smell like your mother? That's it. This smells like Mom. Do I have enough money? Molly asked. You're a lucky girl. This is our last bottle and it's worth exactly $20. Molly smiled broadly, opened her small purse and pulled out the money. We picked up our purchases and headed over to see Santa. I held all the presents while the kids talked and took pictures with the big guy in red. Afterward, I asked the kids if they wanted to help me find a present for Kaylee. She is going to England, and I wanted to buy her some new luggage. I had already paid for her trip as a Christmas present. The children were happy to help me. Of course, I acted as if I really needed their help. I walked over to where the luggage was lying and waited for one of the boys to notice it. This way, Uncle Dan. The suitcases are here. Thank you, boys. Now I need a set with 5 items in it. Of course, the boys knew their numbers and looked around until they saw a set with 5 pieces of luggage. I want to help, Uncle Dan. What can I do? Molly exclaimed. Honey, you can pick a color for Kaylee. Pick a color that you think she will like. Molly walked over to the set, which was bright pink. The boys told her that it should have 5 pieces, but the pink one only had 3. Molly kept looking and found one that was a dark shade of blue. The boys said it had 5 parts, so that's what we bought. Thank goodness there were only 3 pieces in the pink set. We stopped at a burger place, had lunch, and headed home. We took our packages into the house, and the kids asked where they could hide Mom's gifts. They gave them to me to put them in the office. I told them to put Kaylee's luggage on her bed so she could see it when she got home. We picked out a Christmas card from Kaylee, and all 3 kids signed it themselves, including Molly. I told the kids that the gift would be from them. After the girls came back, the boys had to tell Kaylee to go to her room. Sure enough, she saw the luggage and a card from the kids. They were all grinning like Cheshire cats looking at Kaylee. She hugged and kissed each of them, thanking them for the wonderful gift. The next few weeks flew by. Between work and the children's school visits, we kept busy all the time. We bought a tree and put up Christmas decorations. It was the first time in 3 years that I had a Christmas tree. The presence of the kids made the whole holiday season beautiful. Kaylee went to England, and we told Alex and Jake that we would visit them on the 26th, the day after Christmas. The preparations for Christmas were very hectic, but the evenings were wonderful. Every night, the 5 of us would sit in the living room and watch all the Christmas programs. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I went shopping and bought Carmen a few things and just gave her a gift certificate to a women's store. I figured she could buy what she wanted. I went to a jewelry store and bought her an engagement ring. Then I bought her a very sexy red satin and lace nightgown. These 2 things were my special gift to her. Christmas morning came, and the children were excited. The boys came downstairs and said Santa had come, and there were all kinds of presents under the tree. I told them to look in their stockings, and I made coffee myself. It was such a beautiful sight to watch the 3 kids that morning. Even more beautiful was the happiness and joy that appeared on Carmen's face every time one of the children opened a present. Carmen opened presents from his children. She was so excited. From Mark, she got her favorite movies. From Mike, she got a unicorn. And from Molly, she got perfume. Molly said, Mommy, that was the last bottle, and I just had enough money. Carmen looked at the bottom, saw the $50 price tag, looked at me, and smiled. I got some nice gifts from Carmen. I didn't expect her to buy me anything, but it was all so nice. She said Kaylee told her what I liked, and she did her best to buy me what she could. I had 3 cards on the Christmas tree. I addressed one to each of the children. I hid each of them a bike somewhere in the house, and they were told where to find it. I have never seen 3 happier children receiving their first bikes. Molly already had a bike, but we bought her training wheels to start with. We bought them for Mark, too, but we knew he wouldn't use them. His older brother didn't have them. While the kids played with their toys, I handed Carmen her big box of sexy nightgowns. "Wow, that's beautiful. What made you buy it?" Carmen asked. I held out a small package to her. "This comes with it." When she opened it, she cried. When she opened the box and saw the ring, I asked her to marry me. She cried and hugged me. "Why, Dan, why?" "Because I love you, and these 2 months have been the best for me. I want you and the kids to be with me always." So is the answer yes? Dan, the answer is no. Please hear me out before jumping to conclusions. I love you with all my heart. I am sincere about it. For now, the answer is no. I don't understand. Is it because of my age? Dan, please let me finish. No, it's not your age, it's us. We've only known each other for a couple months. It's been a couple of the best months of my life. But it's still only a couple months. You decided to help a family in need. You've done more for this family than you can imagine. After the holidays, things will go back to normal. People will be themselves again. I have a proposition for you. Okay, I'm listening. I want to rent out our rooms. I'll give you $200 a week to help pay expenses. You can have more if you let me. I want us to be a family and live as a family. If in, say, 6 months or sooner, you think it's not working out, just say the word and we'll make another arrangement. I just want you to be sure. It takes time to get used to a woman in your house and 3 kids. I need help paying for myself and being productive. I need your family to see that I'm not some fly-by-night skank who wants your money. I need you to realize that I really do love you. And those aren't just words. Time, Dan, all I'm asking for is time. I'm not going anywhere until you send me away. She handed the ring back to me and kissed me again. She asked if she could keep her nightgown. I think I understood what she was trying to say. We shouldn't rush into marriage right away, but we should make sure it's something we both really want. I figured I could live with that, but I was hoping to get closer to her sexually and lovingly. Our day was busy with the kids playing with their toys. It was cold outside, but since there was no snow, the kids wanted to ride their bikes. Carmen and I put on our coats and watched them ride their new bikes. About mid-afternoon, we got a call from England. It was Kaylee. She was calling to let us know that Ross had proposed to her and she had accepted. He proposed to her in front of Big Ben for hours. They're getting married next June. We told her how happy we were for her and wished each other a Merry Christmas. In the evening, we watched the movie A Christmas Story together, and then the kids went to bed. They all came in and thanked me for the best Christmas ever. I sat on the bed and listened to Carmen take a shower. I knew that when she was done, the wonderful smell would spread throughout the hallway. A few minutes later, the lights came on in the bathroom and then in the hallway. Carmen stood at my door in her sexy new nightgown. "Can I come in?" I didn't even answer as she walked in and closed the door. "Dan, like I told you before, I love you, but we need to postpone the wedding until you get to know me better. I want it to start tonight. Will you make love to me?" I was stunned, but she saw the smile on my face. She walked over to the bed. I pulled back the covers, and she slipped inside and lay down next to me. The only source of light in the room was the reading lamp I was using. I left it on so I could see the woman I'd been thinking about for the past 2 months. It was an unforgettable night, but when I woke up in the morning, she wasn't in my bed. I got up and looked into her room. She and Molly were sound asleep. I went into the kitchen and put the coffee on to boil. After everyone woke up, we had breakfast, and then we had to get dressed because we were going to Alex and her family. We would be having a big Christmas dinner in a day. Jake and his family were there too. We exchanged gifts, and I was surprised that they bought something for Carmen and the kids. Carmen bought something for both Jake and Alex's kids. Kaylee told Carmen that we always buy gifts for the kids, but we don't usually buy for the adults. Jake just told her that Gail saw the sweater and thought it would look good on Carmen. Everyone talked about Christmas and the presents they would receive. Kaylee called them to tell them about the upcoming wedding. Jake looked at me. I knew he was wondering if I had proposed to Carmen. Later, he came up to me and apologized again for his act from a couple of weeks ago. "Dad, did you propose to Carmen?" As a matter of fact, I did. She turned me down. "What? I can't believe it. I really believe she loves you, Daddy. What happened? Time, Jake. She said it's too soon for me to just pick up and marry a woman with 3 kids. She wants to make sure I know I'm doing the right thing. What's more, she wants to contribute money to the household. She doesn't want handouts. She wants a loving relationship. So that's what we're going to do. Give ourselves time. Wow, Daddy, I've never met a woman like that. Dad, I know it sounds silly after all I've said, but don't lose her. She's a special woman. Time, Jake, we'll just give it time. Chapter 5, Someday Later. Life went on and we became a family. Carmen and I took turns cooking. We had a joint checking account where I put $400 a week and Carmen put in her $200. From this account, we paid utilities and bought groceries. We decided that any large purchases we would discuss first. So far, we didn't need anything. I usually stopped by Joe's for lunch, but left when Carmen could sit with me for a few minutes. We really were like a married couple, except we didn't fight and made love every chance we got. I remember our first time in the hot tub. Good thing we had a good filter. When it came to making love, Carmen was the best. Maybe it was the fact that I loved her so much, and that definitely makes the sex that much better. The only time we had to watch her was when Kaylee was home on weekends. We would ask Kaylee to watch the kids while we went somewhere. We're sure Kaylee noticed this, but never said anything. Time flew by, and it was almost time for Kaylee's wedding. She asked Carmen to be her maid of honor. This made Carmen cry. She said she had never had such close friends and family. Kaylee would have liked Molly to be her maid of honor. Kaylee would have liked Molly to be her flower girl, but decided to ask one of her nieces, which she did. It was a very hectic time leading up to the wedding. Kaylee had graduated from college, and we were planning this wedding, and my girlfriend was a bridesmaid. At least the weather warmed up, and I was able to open the pool. When Kaylee and Carmen were running around doing wedding stuff, the kids and I just got in the pool. The pool was a great babysitter, and all I had to do was stay close by. The closer we got to the wedding, the more I thought about Carmen and myself. I loved those kids, and I knew they loved me. I was going to surprise Carmen at the wedding. I had to ask a few favors, but I hoped it would work out. Carmen and I hadn't talked about the wedding since Christmas. The day of Kaylee's wedding, I put on my tuxedo. Jake and Rob were in the wedding party. Alex and Gail were too. Everyone was dressed up, and the wedding was to start in a few minutes. Carmen was supposed to be running around as a bridesmaid. I had nothing to do, but I talked to Carmen's kids. I told them they could go ahead and sit with me. Mike, Mark, and Molly sat in the front row. Of course, Molly sat next to where I was sitting. I told them that they should be quiet and just watch the wedding. I told them I had to leave and come back, and then walk Kaylee down the aisle. I hoped they would listen to me. All the family members were at the wedding. The music started up, and Ross, Jake, and Rob stood in front with the minister. Alex was the first to walk down the aisle. As she stepped forward, the children waved to her and said, "Hi, Aunt Alex." At least they said it softly. Gail came next with the same result. "Hi, Aunt Gail." She said a soft hello to the children. The kids were excited because their mom was walking down the aisle. "Hi, Mommy, you look very pretty." They said it a little louder. Carmen smiled, but held her finger to her mouth to calm them down a little. The flower girl and the ring bearer came next. They were Alex and Rob's children, so the kids kept waving at them. All the kids from both families were smiling. The music changed, and Kaylee walked down the aisle with me. We both had tears of joy running down our cheeks. As Kaylee and I reached the front of the church, I heard Molly say rather loudly, "Wow, Aunt Kaylee looks like a princess." There were a few chuckles from the crowd, and I saw the smile on Kaylee's face. I couldn't think of a better compliment. I stepped back and sat down. I looked up and saw my family. My daughter Alex, my daughter-in-law Gail, who I treated like a daughter, and my beautiful girlfriend, who I truly loved. There was also my baby girl getting married, and my future son-in-law standing there, and to his right was my son Jake and my son-in-law Rob. Rounding out the ceremony were my 2 grandchildren, the ring bearer and the flower girl. My other 2 grandchildren were seated with their grandparents. I was thinking about what a blessed person I am. I have such a wonderful family. I loved each and every one of them. At the reception, all the kids were pretty much together. Everyone was kind of looking out for them. We ate, and then the dancing started. I looked up, and on the first number, my Carmen came out to dance with me. I love you, Carmen. I love you too, Dan. Are you serious, Carmen? Do you really want this? Dan, I really mean it deep down. And she kissed me in front of everyone. She didn't usually do that. Our kisses usually happened in private. As the evening went on, it was time to toss the bouquet. All the single girls came out, and Jake told Carmen to come out since she was single. She felt awkward, so she walked out onto the parquet. On the count of 3, Kaylee threw the bouquet. Some of the girls shouted jokingly. Kaylee then sat down and Ross took off her garter. All the guys applauded when they saw part of Kaylee's thigh. Next, all the single guys had to go out and catch the garter and then put it on the leg of the girl who caught the bouquet, which of course was Carmen. I was one of those guys. I stood there and Ross looked at me. Sorry guys, this belongs to my father-in-law, holding out the garter to me. I'm sorry. Of course, everyone was curious about what was going on, including Carmen. She was asked to sit down as I was to put the garter on her leg. I stood on one knee as my hand slid the garter up her leg. When I reached her hip, I stopped, reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. I was already on my knees. Carmen, I have waited another 6 months. In the presence of all my family and friends, I ask you, will you marry me? Everyone stood up and asked. Everyone stood in complete silence, waiting for her answer. Then Molly emerged from the crowd of people. She looked at her mother, who had tears in her eyes, and said, "Say yes, Mommy. Dan, I love you with all my heart. I will do anything to make you happy. Yes, I will marry you." Everyone started screaming. Kaylee walked over to Carmen, and they both cried. I doubt there was a single dry eye in the place, but I knew my eyes weren't dry when I walked over and kissed my bride-to-be. Epilogue. We are now happily married. Carmen quit her job at Joe's Diner and now helps run the gas station and convenience store. Everyone likes her and says it's nice to work at such a family-oriented place. We are deciding if I should adopt children. I told Carmen I wanted to, and she said it would have to wait a little while. Molly already calls me Daddy, and the boys sometimes call me Daddy and sometimes Uncle Dan. I think they do it to confuse some of their new friends. I look back on my life and wonder what would have happened to my family if I had known about Harvey Kittle all those years ago. I also think about what would have happened to my family if Annie hadn't died in that accident. Life is a very fragile thing. One mistake early in life can change the future forever. It's really something to think about. I'm sitting on the couch with my new wife. We cuddle while my new family plays on the floor and we watch TV together. Today, we're going to watch a love story. Mark bought his mom Titanic for Christmas, and we are going to watch it together. All except Molly. She'll fall asleep about halfway through.